This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl, episode number 242 of course, the Lydian Spin. Tim, I
Yes.
have to ask you, as a man who knows many things, what might this quote refer to? Quote, they kill and play with their victims' bodies like dolls.
Killer whales.
Close, but no. The elephants of Thailand are rampaging and starting to invade villages and kill people, which usually they'd rather avoid you. But it's interesting because the people that are the preservationists for the Elephant Society, they say that beehives put around the perimeter keep the elephants away. Like, what? Beehive? But they also make these little tiny, like cherry bombs that don't hurt them to scare them off to try to drive them back into their preserve. But I mean, they're not only becoming murderous, they're playing with the dead bodies, tearing them limb from limb.
I mean, elephants are tricky, and my brother spends a lot of time in sub-Saharan Africa, and you know they're protected, but then sometimes, you know, the locals have to kill them because once they decide and they're determined to do what they want to do, you can't really stop them. They'll just like storm through a village and just stomp everything down. You don't want to piss off elephants, basically. And it's funny, we always talk about hippos. The elephant is basically.
How could we not always talk about hippos? They're the most hideous things alive. They're deadly. They're horrible. They eat everything. They weigh 19,000 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, their canines are like feet long, but the elephant's basically the only thing that hippos don't fuck with.
But wait a minute. Do hippos and elephants ever cross paths?
Oh, yes, they do. Yes, they do, because hippos are.
Leave it to the expert.
They're super territorial, and they just go nuts on anything. If you kind of like they're all like a bunch of grumpy old men. Like, you get off my yard, I get out of my yard. They basically just attack you as soon as you're in their zone. So
now, I have to ask you, Tim. Sure. I know you're a fan of modern art. Elephant paintings?
That's a funny one. I don't even know what's going on there. I mean, I just don't. I think it's just like it's something to do with just the technical I don't know what's going on. Do they see abstraction? I still buy it, but
I don't know. Yeah, you stick a brush in their trunk and off they go. I always figured I might as well stick a brush up my ass and I could do a Jackson Pollock in no time.
Oh my God.
Anyway, what do you got for me, Tim?
Well, you know, you're talking about beehives and all that stuff. Termite mounds, or what are they called? Yeah, termite mounds are inspiring a lot of architects right now. Now, of course, termites can be super destructive to a house,
right?
But
their nests.
Their mounds are so efficient. So as architects are being challenged with some of the environmental challenges of today and in the future, they're turning to some of their designs and doing these like 3D scans because they're super green. In other words, they basically take materials from the environment. They'll be in the middle of a hot desert and they'll have it cool and moist inside. Basically, they're just looking to termites as inspiration of how to make these new kind of greenhouses. And I guess it's showing some success. I mean, it seems like it's a good idea.
Well, also, you know, I really love this idea because, and I've talked about this before, but that in the desert, right? I mean, you can't. They're trying to now make, based on bacteria. There's a certain bacteria when mixed with water that it can make these like caves. And for instance, once it's mixed with water, they're nearly indestructible. So they're turning into like mini compounds. And again, like if you study wasp nests or you study, for instance, ants underground, which if you ever have noticed, ants like have a graveyard in one corner, food in the other. They're very a trash compactor in the other. I think we need to look to the ancients beyond people to get better concepts for what needs to be done.
That's not just the other living beings and you know, looking to nature for solutions. Physicists look at things like snowflakes, like fractal geometry is completely found in nature all the time. You know, they say, who said this? I don't think it was Einstein. So basically, all the answers are in front of us. The question is, can you see them?
Right. Well, so also now, I mean, through photosynthetic cyanobacteria, they are using this to grow structural building material. So they can actually, they're trying to make buildings that form themselves
That's
through
cool.
yes, and also with E. coli, actually, they can create limestone particles in different shapes, sizes. So again, we have to look backward sometimes to go forward. Now, speaking of being freaking backwards, I just got to
Okay.
get to this one. I
Yes.
love oops, lawyer in Trump election fraud case caught on Zoom without his pants
I think
on.
that was intentional. I think that was intentional. I think it's a distraction. It just draws. Yeah. Keep on going.
Christopher Kocheroff, who represents Harrison Floyd in the Donald Trump election fraud case. I mean, just end this charade already, right? And he's had numerous Zoom blunders, but he forgot that the mic was on and he was shouting things like during the when Fonnie Willis's father was speaking, like, I hate him. Didn't realize. And then he's caught with his freaking pants down. And the thing
Yeah.
is, Trump's been caught with not only his pants down, his finger in the fucking pie, and up, neck deep in shit that he's manufactured himself. And that guy the orange clown has got to fall into the orange jumpsuit and my misery.
I don't know where you think this is going, but tomorrow, yesterday, it was announced that, whether Trump is immune to, criminal charges, it was announced the Supreme Court that he stacked is going to take it on because all the judges are like, no, you're not above the law. You're not above the law. And now it's going to the finish line where he's fucking, stacked the court. And if basically they say, yes, he's immune, we're just setting up dictatorships for forever.
I have to have some faith that it possibly might fall. But and look,
we will
speaking
see.
about criminals in Congress, I mean, this freaking loudmouth. And the problem is when you say, oh, there's not enough women in government and politics and corporations, it's true. But then we get ones like fucking Lauren Boebert, whose teenage son was arrested on nearly 24 charges related to a crime spree in Colorado, the district she represents. This is like 2 days after she was talking about the Biden crime family, which, trust me, I'm not for Biden either, but I'm certainly not for her. Her husband was arrested twice. She was, domestic violence herself. And now her son, like 12 counts, 4 counts of criminal possession of I don't even know what a financial device is. 4 counts of criminal possession of ID documents, or maybe he was making money. Count of conspiracy to commit a felony. I mean, she can't even control her own fucking family, and she's trying to run a seat.
Well, that's classic.
Get the fuck out of here. You know what? Get out.
Well, Mitch McConnell's this is gonna be his last term. He's gonna.
Oh, you know what?
Step down.
It's like about
after he endorsed
Trump.
He's really been effective in the worst sense. But
he might be the second most hated politician ever.
Well, I mean, he officially endorsed Trump. It makes it does make sense.
He's a cocksucker of the lowest order. He's a turtle fucker and whatever. He's a turtle
fucker. Well, here's a little interesting story. We were talking about architecture earlier, and homes. Deborah and Scott Senner, from Oklahoma City.
Senner, like
Senner. I don't think I've ever.
All right, got to get it right. Sure, I might look him up and give him a phone call.
He was doing a business trip, and his wife's like, maybe I'll go. She usually doesn't, but she just is like 5-6 days. 1 or 2 days into it, they get a phone call from they don't know who. They're like, 80% of your roof is gone. And they're like, what's that? What's going on? And they're like, oh, it's a construction company. When they texted the address to these roofing company, the guy made a typo and flipped these digits. And basically they showed up at 8 a.m. and basically started by just taking most of that roof
off the wrong house.
Wrong house. And then it was just chaos. But the construction company honored their mistake, and now the family has a $30,000 new roof, and their insurance went down $3,500 a month. So they won, and the construction company's living in a world of pain right now.
One for the small guys because there's not enough going to the small guys.
Interesting fact: Munchausen syndrome. Basically, since the internet has gone way the fuck up.
Hey, has it gone way up, or has the knowledge of it being out there gone way up?
Well,
go ahead.
The study claims that it has gone up because people are self-diagnosing all the time, and it's feeding into that. And then, of course, during COVID, it really went up because people were afraid of going to hospitals and doctors, so they're diagnosing themselves, which is they go down the rabbit hole. It must be this, and it must be connecting all these dots, and they're not professional doctors. but then also social media. There's people who are crying for attention, and they're making up, and people just believe it because who's got the gall to say, I have 3rd-degree breast cancer? I mean, who just says that? And so then people believe it, and they get all this attention. So it's really it's becoming an issue.
I mean, the thing is this: when raising your hand and getting attention about your failing physical condition, which we all have to some degree or another, or is kind of pathetic. But the thing is, the body is fallible. We are merely the vehicles for bacteria and viruses. There's so many problems that the body can have that we don't even know how to diagnose. Like, oh, is Lyme disease real? Is chronic fatigue real? Or Morgellons, hello, Joni Mitchell, does it exist? Does it not? How sick does the mind make the body? And how much curative can the mind do to the body? This is all up for grabs. But raising your hand, or I mean, with Munchausen, making somebody else sick for attention is far fucking worse.
Oh, absolutely. I know, the CDC, my brother works at the CDC. They definitely said that, yes, Lyme disease is real. Chronic Lyme disease. Yeah, no, but he says Morgellons is not. In fact, he was getting this, according to him, he was getting like threatening letters, like being sent, like it's a conspiracy, you're hiding this stuff, and to the point where Congress forced them to do these tests on Morgellons. And so with all they're using all the greatest labs and all this stuff, and spending tons of taxpayers' money on this, and it was not even a joke. They're like, oh, this fiber thing that you claim that grew out of your body, we analyze it with all the top tools. No, that's a fiber from a Bed Bath and Beyond product.
Yeah, okay, but you know what? Okay, hang on. I can't wait till microplastics start coming out from the fucking inside of the body. Maybe it'll make bracelets around your wrist or a necklace. Because by this point, very shortly, we will have ingested so much. Keep drinking your water bottles, kids. Come on, I never liked those things anyway. We are merely a dump site for bacteria, microplastics, and there are so many problems the body can have. I'm just glad I'm as healthy as I am. That's not because I'm a fembot. My mind is stronger than my body, other than pain. Tim, you rarely get sick, but we have been known to make other people sick, and that's our Munchausen syndrome. We got Munchausen. I call it Munchausen syndrome. Make other people sick. All right, with that, we're going to close out because this is, as always, the Lydia and Spin. Lydia Lunch. Tim Dahl, our guest this week, is Sandy Ewen, architect, visual artist, and avant guitar player. All right, goodbye.
All right.
This is the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and Sandy Ewen. What's interesting, Sandy, about you is people often ask me, what your advice to young musicians? And I always say, become an architect or a chemist. And Sandy is an architect, graphic designer, visual artist, and improvisational guitar player. You're kind of the total package.
Yeah, I do a lot.
We all do a lot. That's why you're here. So it's very interesting that lately you've done music with a lot of improvisational artists, and recently you've been doing some shows with Roscoe Mitchell.
Yeah, we played in St. Louis a couple months ago, and then back in January we did a recording session. It was me and obviously Roscoe and Damon Smith and Weasel Walter.
And that's out now. Is that the one that's out now?
No, the one that's out now was recorded back in 2012.
What's that called? That is a really good title.
A railroad spike forms the voice.
Do you play the guitar with the railroads? I love railroad spikes. I know you play your guitar with various objects of possible torture.
Yeah. I use a railroad spike and those pieces of wire that come off the street cleaners. And, just an assortment of things that I've acquired over time. Some threads.
Any Brillo pads?
Yeah, a little bit.
I got some dental tools I'm looking at, but that might be a little. It would be great for just plucking one string at a time.
I do have a dental tool. It's like one of those little hooked ones.
I got. Yeah. We share some dental tools with little hooks.
So for people that don't know, Sandy's playing. She plays the guitar like on a table.
No, not on a table.
Oh, on your lap. A lap. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. On your lap. But the point is, it's not around strapped around your shoulders. It's not hanging. It's the strings are aimed towards, the sky basically, or the ceiling, and
Yeah.
you use all types of found objects to.
Well, she plays it like a steel guitar, but she uses metal objects in order to get her sound.
Right. What made you decide to play it this way?
If you're playing with objects, if you lie it flat, they don't fall off.
Right. So like prepared guitar is just much easier based on gravity.
Yeah, well, when I was in high school, I started playing with an ensemble in Houston, and we would do a lot of like exercises that had a lot of listening, and you maybe were supposed to make like 1 or 2 sounds in like 5 minutes or something. So if you're gonna make one sound, do you want to like hit a string, or do you want to make it some sort of interesting concoction with?
So what was the goal of this exercise? Basically, is it to teach improv by just not like everyone's coming out, through the door and screaming all the time? It was to teach listening, or is it based on like compositional design, like these kind of slow, minimal kind of pieces?
This to teach listening, I think, primarily.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I like about your contribution to improvisational music, Sandy, is the opposite of the problem I have with what I call white boy crack dick music, which is like a hurricane of endless noise, usually for 15 minutes or so, which has no sense of drama except for hysteria. There's a lot of it like that. And I think that the way that you play, you bring things down to a different atmosphere, which makes it more pleasurable, at least to my ears, because you can actually hear what's going on. And it's not a sound of complete frustration. I don't even know what it's the sound of.
Right. Well, it's not static.
Still,
it's not static, and people tune out static, all types of static things. I mean, especially with the consumer infrastructure we all live in, we have to block out. We're being bombarded all the time, so we have to.
Well, there are people that like unlistenable, chaotic, hysterical noise nonstop. But what I'm saying, let me get back to this, is that in your contribution to improvisational music, and it brings me kind of back to Roland S. Howard, who was not an improvisational musician, but what he taught me that I applied to spoken word is the pause. I'm doing it now between breaths. And with listening to one sound for 4 or 5 minutes, perhaps that educated you to understand that in a more minimal format, you can actually have a different kind of depth.
Yeah, well, it's important to have all the sounds be considered and cared for. So if you're just throwing them at people, you haven't really like handled it in a careful way. Sound is not fragile, but like you want to listen to what's going on. You want to make sure what you're doing is aware of the other performers. You don't need to mimic them. You don't need to play with them. You can play against people. But if you don't know what's going on because you weren't listening, then you're just uninformed.
Who were some of the first out musicians you were drawn to? Okay, so you said that when you first started playing guitar in like high school, I read somewhere that, of course, you start with cover songs, Velvet Underground, whatever. But when did you really, what was the first, like, totally alt jazz or rock that you heard and that sparked something in you?
I got into Sun Ra Orchestra and I guess like the Minutemen and stuff like that when I was in high school. And that's how I met the group that was playing free improv. They were doing workshops with Sam Rivers Trio, I think it was.
Oh, Sam Rivers played a lot in Orlando as well.
Yeah.
It was one of the best clubs in America at that point, the Sapphire Supper Club, run by James Verdi and
the first free improv show, like that Sam Rivers Trio played in Houston, so I saw them there, and then became part of the crew there that got to play with everybody who came through town. So I met Keith Rowe, all sorts of different people as a high school student, and we worked with Pauline Oliveros a couple of times.
And so you're a high school student already into weirdness. You're going to these shows, you're meeting these people. How did they treat you? How were you? I mean, you know where you want to go and you've gotten there. What was their reaction to you? Because I know what the reaction to me was when I knew what I wanted to do. as a high school dropout. Fear and loathing, people would run away. But you're a little bit different than I am, even though we can play the same style of guitar.
I don't know that I did know what I was going to do. It was just more a process of getting to know the community and working with them. I've never really had a goal for what to do musically or artistically. I sort of take it project by project, and I've been very fortunate to play with, some of the best people in the world. And everyone's always been just very kind to me. I don't know why.
Well, I do, because you're a very kind person yourself. So you might maybe stimulate that in them.
Well, thanks, Lydia.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Did you ever did you like popular music, like rock and roll or any of that growing up at all? Or did you go straight to the avant-garde?
Straight to Captain Beefheart and Sun Ra.
The first CD I ever bought was Bright in the Corners by Pavement, which
Okay.
is like that's a weird choice if you're like in elementary school.
Right.
My brother had the single, and when we were moving to the United States, we were in the car for like 10 hours or 9 hours or something. And I was listening to it on my CD player Walkman nonstop. So when we went to the CD store, I wanted to get the full album. So, I went pretty fast to indie rock. And then I think living in the United States as a Canadian, you realize that your peer group doesn't know anything about music because they were completely unaware of so many of the Canadian artists that were so important to us. I'm thinking
please name some.
like
Please,
the Tragically Hip, or like Our Lady Peace, like all these sort of like alt rock Canadian groups that were huge in Canada, never quite made it in the US. So if you're from the get-go kind of skeptical of what your friends are listening to, it kind of pushes you to seek out more of that.
Well, a lot of us who are on this podcast are not really accepted in the United States, which is why we have to go to Europe a lot of the times to perform it, because I guess it's kind of similar concept. So where in Canada are you from, and when did you leave there? I had no idea.
Oh, I lived there till I was 10. Grew up in Oshawa, which is, outside of Toronto. And I go back there most summers. My family has a cottage on a lake about 2 hours north of Toronto.
Okay, this is another weird parallel between you and I. My father was Canadian, and we used to go to a cabin on the lake where I'd go eel fishing, but in Watertown, not Kitchener. So
yeah. No, Canada, everyone has like a little cabin on the lake somewhere, or at least someone's uncle does.
Yeah, this was on the others. This was still on the U.S. border, but yeah, I do remember. I was the only one that would catch the eels. It's kind of like the tin drum story. I don't know. I didn't even eat them. I would just play with them. I don't know.
I've never been eel fishing, but I do like fishing. In the summertime, I like to catch smallmouth bass.
We might have to go fishing sometime together. I love to put a hook in people. I fish as much. I like hooks. Just saying.
Were you a fan of no? Were you a fan of No Means No in terms of like?
I've heard of them, but it's not a band I've ever bothered to check out. And
I'm trying to think about like, kind of more underground Canadian bands. Were you into heavy metal? You're Canadian. Were you into heavy metal or wrestling? Because you are Canadian.
No.
Nice.
There's still time, Sandy. There's still time. Dark Side of the Ring. Any night, Dark Side of the Ring. I'll pop your cherry.
I've gone to see the Mexican wrestling down in Mexico City. That's quite fun. But
that's very different than the whole pedigree of Canadian wrestlers. I mean, that's the history.
Have you ever been inspired to wear a lucha libre mask while playing guitar?
That's not happened yet, but I guess there's always the future.
That'll be our guitar duet. We'll both wear masks, and nobody will know who's playing what. That'd be amazing.
Let's do it.
Give me that railroad spike.
You also raced sailboats as a kid, correct?
Yeah.
What? Do tell.
I grew up sailing. Oh my God, my parents had a cottage, and they used to sail. My mom and dad used to race albacore, which is a class of sailboat, and I think they won the North Americans. They came like second in the world or something. I don't know. They were really good racing, and so my brother and I grew up sailing. They got me a sunfish, which is like a little.
I know what that is. Yeah.
They got me one of those when I was like 6 years old, and I used to sail down to my grandparents' cottage down the lake, which was fun.
By yourself?
Yeah, I was like 6 or 7.
You ran away on what was the boat called?
Sunfish.
You could sort of see me from shore. Like I was sort of if you yelled really loud, I'd probably be able to hear.
Well, what's interesting is Simon Slater, our producer, he also has been known to sail some boats.
Oh yeah,
but
he competed on national races. So you guys
you
connect on that.
sportsmen, you sportswomen and men, amazing.
Yeah, I was on the sailing team in college for my first semester, but I couldn't do that and be in a band and do architecture school at the same time. It
Right.
just wasn't possible.
Let's talk about the architecture school. I think architecture is so important. New architecture needs to be designed. I mean, I'm very much into underground architecture, recycle things, and also a bacteria that, when mixed with water in the desert, can make catacombs. I just think architecture, and having lived in Spain, of course, some of the most beautiful architecture ever. So I'm very fascinated that what pulled you to architecture? Because I always say, go into architecture, and then you didn't even hear me because you went into it before you heard me.
Yeah, I think if I had my choice, I would have taken like visual art in university, but my parents wouldn't let me.
But you do incredible visual art. You didn't need to go to school for that. But
yeah, you don't need to. I think music school and art school, I think they're good for making connections and sort of figuring things out, but I don't think it's necessary.
Right.
So yeah, so I didn't go. I went to architecture school, and
so you went to architecture school. So are you still involved with designing things? What kind of things did you design?
I haven't designed that much myself. Right now I'm working for like other architects, mostly doing 3D computer modeling and graphic rendering. I designed my parents redid their cottage a couple years ago, and I designed that. And I designed little pieces of things. There was a high rise in Houston, and I designed the floor. It was like a marble floor with a really cool pattern, and I did that.
Well, maybe you need to investigate designing tiny houses. I hear they're all the rage. I think it's a very good idea. People need tiny houses. We don't need big mansions. We need tiny houses.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
That's funny. So how often, how many hours a week do you think you spend on architecture?
Right now, none. I mean, a couple hours yesterday. I don't have a project right now, but when I'm busy, it's a little bit more than full time. I can, sometimes I'm doing like 12-hour days and stuff for like a week or two.
Deadlines and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it just sort of depends on the deadlines. And right now I'm between projects, which is frustrating because I would like to be working, but this is when you're doing contract work for people, you're a 1099 employee, you just, sometimes there's jobs and sometimes there's not. So
you've moved around a bit. Canada, the first 10 years. Where did you go after Canada? Did you go to Delaware at that point? Where did you go?
Massachusetts, Florida, Delaware, and then Texas.
Where in Massachusetts?
Oh, you live in Acton, Massachusetts?
I know where that is. Yeah. Acton, Boxborough area, right?
Yeah.
Because Tim has thrown some of his own seed around there as well. Well, Massachusetts, that is.
Yeah, sort of. But yes, of course. So Houston, you were obviously, you spent a lot of time there. You're part of the scene there. During the pandemic, you were kind of oscillating between New York and Houston. Is that correct?
Yeah, like my mom recently died of cancer, and right before the pandemic, I'd gone down there to help her and my dad because she was going to do a cancer surgery. So in March of 2020, I was back in New York and I had a sublet and I was going to find an apartment, but pandemic hit and I didn't want to sign to pay a ton of money to, be locked in an apartment with a bunch of strangers I didn't know. So I split town, went back to Texas, and I was there for a couple months and then moved back to New York in, what was that, like November of 2020? And I've been living in Sunset Park.
Oh, yes.
My neighbor. Oh, I didn't realize you were in Sunset Park. You might have told me that the other night, but you, me, Matt Nelson, Kate Fox, all neighbors.
Yes.
Simon Slater, Michael Foster. Tim's not too far away either. But...
No, my studio is right there. So how often do you listen to music these days?
Not very often.
Well, I mean, when you go to or play shows, because you were in New York, you get to.
Yeah, I like going out to shows. I like playing shows. I used to go to shows almost every night, and now maybe like 2 or 3 nights a week.
Yeah.
Oh, is that all?
I mean, I always see you at shows. So yes, you're around.
Yeah, go to the same kind of shows.
Well, Sandy and I, Lydia, did a show at Freddie's a couple weeks ago with Brian Chase.
I am never aware of any of this stuff.
Yeah, that was
I
a
live
fun
about
show.
5 minutes from Freddie's.
That was yeah.
That was a
played
fun
that.
time. It was bizarre. And
Yes, Tim Dahl and Sandy Ewen. That was it.
and Brian Chase, the drummer of Yeah Yeah Yeahs, who can actually improvise.
Okay. Oh yeah, that must have been fun.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, it was a really fun night. What's your next gig?
Yeah, what's coming up?
I'm Friday. I'm playing. Aaliyah Alton's got this like gigantic 20-person ensemble.
Oh, right. It's the Stone residency. I saw her posting.
Yeah. I am very curious how it's going to turn out. In my experience,
I mean, a 20-piece.
maybe it's like 18, but it's something absurd.
I mean, 18. I'd rather bang 18 stones together than go and listen to 18 people at the Stone, but that's just me.
I'm open to the possibility that it'll turn out really well, but I've never. I can't. Maybe it'll turn out great. I don't want to sound negative.
But I mean, I'm just asking this, but I really enjoy, of course, solo performances, duets, as I call them, trios, an occasional 4-piece rock band, never anything more than that because it's just too much. Don't you think? Have you ever walked out of a performance that you were involved in?
I'm involved in. I don't know. I like to. So if there's enough people at something, I'll walk out of someone else's set if I don't feel. I don't want to I don't want to ruin anyone's set by like making a scene about leaving it.
No, I mean while you were playing.
No, I mean I can get grumpy and just stop playing.
We did a show together, you, me, and Weasel, and I was so grumpy at that show. And Jasmine Hurst showed it to me recently. I'm like, no, I am so grumpy. I don't think I'm not as grumpy as I once was, but I don't know why I was so grumpy at that show. But, I don't know why I thought that. I don't know if maybe I walked out on my own show at that. That's the other time, but it's an interesting concept. Tim, you have never walked out on one of your shows?
Sometimes people.
You might be the last man standing.
No, sometimes people don't know when to stop.
That's the issue.
And I was on a tour. This guy, Toon Verbruggen, who's a Belgian drummer, and he kind of hires this all-star band, quote unquote. So the original bass player was going to be Trevor Dunn, but it was like Nate Woolley, Hilmar Jensen from Iceland, Andrew D'Angelo. I mean, it's some players, and Trevor couldn't do it, so I ended up doing it. And there was this one night, I think we were in Brussels. I was like, this shit won't fucking stop. And I took my bass off my body and threw it on the drum set and walked off. And
I've always found you to be a man. I've always found you to be a man and a musician of incredible precision.
Well,
you have to know when to stop.
I wasn't angry. There was no anger vibe, and everyone was kind of like, "Thank you." And it was like
exactly. I love that concept because you know what? You got to know when to stop.
Yeah. So that's as much as I think I've got. I feel like there's another story where everyone left and the one musician still there didn't take the hint and this kept on playing solo for a long time. I'm trying to remember what gig that was. That happened.
So, Sandy, when you're not at shows 2 or 3 nights a week, what do you do with your nights?
Hang out with friends. And if there's like a bars nearby, I go to.
So you're kind of a bar hopper.
Yeah, I like karaoke night. I don't know.
All right, hang on a minute, sis. Now, what would be your favorite karaoke track to do? I had no idea.
I really like singing Radiohead songs.
What?
Well, hang on. In a lot of my spoken word, I have to get in because it's true. I'm a creep. They're all losers. Yeah, I have to.
That's a tough one for me.
That's the only Radiohead song I know.
It's probably overdone as a karaoke song. I think the key, if you're gonna do creep, is you got to make it extra creepy.
Well, see, I only do those 2 lines because I am extra creepy. And you know what, Sandy? Sweet as you are, you got a bit of a frickin' creep in you too, honey. Which is
roar.
Can't hide that creep under that sweet smile. I smell a creep when I know a creep when I smell one, and that's a high compliment coming from the Queen creep.
Yeah.
So are you touring anytime this year?
I'm going to Texas next week. I'm gonna hang out in Houston for a little while, visit my buds there. Gonna play a duo with Juan Garcia, who's a bass player that I have known since I was in high school.
Okay.
And probably I think I have another show scheduled at cons, which I haven't really booked out yet, but I got
How long will you be in Texas for?
like a week, and then I'm gonna go visit a friend of mine in Atlanta for like 3 nights, and then Tom Carter and Rachel Roscoe are gonna meet me up in Atlanta. We're gonna do a little tour back up the East Coast to back to New York.
What
Okay.
kind of instrumentation is that then? It's your improvisational railroad spiked dental tool guitar. And what are the other two characters playing?
Tom and I have had a guitar duo since I was in college. Tom plays more like arpeggiated looped guitar stuff. He's a great improviser. He used to be I guess still is in a band called Charlombides. Anyway, so he and I have been playing forever, and I don't know if Rachel's going to be joining us or not, but she's been working on some projections with light and overhead projector stuff, so she might be doing that, or maybe I don't know. I haven't asked her.
I want to talk about your visual art for a few minutes, because I remember seeing some a while ago, and it reminded me, and I don't know what elements you're using, I don't know how you're creating them, but I'm a bacterial and virus freak, and they looked like kind of bacterial, some of what I saw, which I really loved. They were very beautiful, but also possibly deadly.
Yeah.
How are you creating these pieces, and what is the concept or theme? Or you might have many themes, but am I getting that right?
Yeah, I mean, a few years ago, let me see if I have like slide projectors that I bought at a garage sale, and I started to make my own slides out of plastic. I first started painting on them, but then I started, blow torching them. So a lot of melted plastic. At a certain point, I realized I didn't need to fit stuff into a slide projector. I was using a digital scanner to, get really, really high resolution of these little pieces of melted plastic, which might be, 2 or 3 inches wide or something like that. And then if you get such a high resolution, you get all this sort of minute detail of all the bubbles and burn bits. And
they were beautiful. I mean, what I saw was really, I loved it. It was stunning.
Thanks. Yeah. The colors, I was using like lighting gels. So just every color you could think of, just melting things mostly.
But it did look like a bacterial invasion of the highest order.
Yeah, I think what it seems, I mean, it's the organic forms and the sort of naturalness of the shapes, because it is a physical thing, but the way it's presented, it looks almost like a painting. But the fact that it's real adds a sort of a quality where you can see the structure and the thickness of it, like has some like functional meaning rather than just being an artistic gesture.
Well, and what's interesting is you said organic, but what you're actually dealing with is the most inorganic, which is plastic that you're then burning to make it look as if it's organic invasion.
Well, yeah, all materials sort of have a natural way that they deform and they react to heat or react to physical distress. So I think a lot of artists, like, they have an idea that they're going to paint a picture of a certain thing, and they have like a concept in their mind that they're attempting to create visually. But I tend to take the materials like as they actually are. And obviously there's a voice with my choices, but I'm more trying to highlight what the materials are inherently good at, rather than trying to cram them into a shape of a tree or a shape of a face or like something.
I suggest you check out, and we've had her on at the podcast, Jennifer Nazary, who uses bacteria to create her artwork, and that's really beautiful stuff encased in glass. So it kind of reminded me of that, not the same genre, but it has the same impact on me, because I really like these forms either in nature or in supernature.
Yeah.
Created or not by woman or natural elements.
What's her name again? I'm going to write it down.
Jennifer Nazary, Sirey. She's been on the podcast. It's very interesting stuff. So yeah, we'd love to have a link to some of your artwork as well for this. So
okay, I'll send you a link.
I'm very happy about that. Timothy?
Yeah. So, what's your dream gig, Sandy? Is there, you know, you're playing with all these great musicians and you're doing what you want to do. Are there areas of music that you have not touched or experienced that you would love to? It doesn't necessarily have to be a genre, but it could be. I mean, what would be something that would be very satisfying that you have not experienced yet musically?
Well, something I'd like to experience again is maybe I love playing free improv music, but I used to be in a band called Weird Weeds, and I really liked writing songs with the band.
Okay.
And I don't necessarily need like a tight song format, but I miss some of the more compositional groups that I used to be in. I had an all-female large ensemble that I used to make everyone write music for, and that was a lot of. It was rewarding. It was a pain in the ass to honestly get that many people to show up at a certain place and coordinate all those schedules, but it was very rewarding. So I miss it seems like most of the projects I do now are free improv with like very little rehearsal, and I kind of miss having a broader scope and a broader idea of, I don't know, just creating a project that's bigger than just an evening.
Sure. Did you write lyrics with that band?
Yeah.
Did you sing?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how you got good at karaoke.
Yeah. No, I think I got good at karaoke. I was in a jazz cover band with Jason Jackson and Ruthie. I just like some
what songs would you sing? What songs would you sing? I need to know.
I used to sing like Mood, Indigo. I don't know, just like a bunch of, and You Go to My Head. I don't know. We had a whole set list. We used to play like every.
Did you wear a sexy gown?
No, but we used to have like a monthly gig or weekly at Natsuo, which is like a.
Well, I've seen you in some sexy gowns. They look great.
But yeah, that was a good way to get good at singing, is to do like a jazz cover band. And I was playing weird guitar with that, but like we all took turns singing.
Did you play the same kind of style guitar? I mean, do you or can you and play chords?
Well, she said she was composing. I think she can play chords and beyond.
No, I mean, it doesn't matter again. But you know, since you played not.
I was with my band Weird Weeds. There were some guitar parts that had notes, and I had to play the notes in the correct order at the right time. I was not a fan of that.
I hear you.
I think there's a lot of people that really excel at playing traditional guitar, and they're doing such a great job that for me to sort of moonlight trying to do that in addition to what I'm doing is completely unnecessary. Like these people have it down. Those notes are played correctly. I got nothing for that, but I can do all my stuff with my own.
And nobody can do it like you, baby. So that's right. I mean, rock, you got to be hard rock, any kind of rock. You got to any kind of music, really. You got to know what you got to be yourself. Where you fit exactly. You got to be yourself.
Not everyone has to do everything. Like you don't have to, like rock players don't need to play free improv. And
and hello, it's why I work with some people that know how to do hard rock and some people that know how to do improv and some people that know how to do genre defining, redefining anything. So you just have to be yourself.
It's great to learn, but at a certain point, like maybe someone can learn everything, but I think
well, you learned how to do architecture, bird plastics, you make beautiful paintings, improv guitar, and play with a lot of incredible people. I mean, sure, there's time for more, no problem.
Yeah.
All right, so you have architecture. You're going to go on a little road thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think you're pretty, in the best way, it's kind of impulsive. You go with the flow, and you kind of, I mean, obviously you plan and make designs. You're an architect, but it seems like you're kind of like live day by day in the present. Like, okay, you know what? I think I'm gonna go do this now. And not many people can do that, and that's pretty cool that you can actually.
Well, and also the second part of that, Tim, is how do you get your gigs, Sandy? Because that takes up a lot of time. Tim and I know it. You know it. I mean, finding gigs, knowing where you can play, making sure you're not going in the hole because you're doing it? What's your methodology to that?
I mean, in New York, a lot of people ask me to play with them, and I usually say yes. Sometimes my friends are coming through town, and if I know that they are, I will try and set up a gig. And I usually set stuff up at the record shop in Red Hook or at Freddy's because
Right.
they usually
Neither very profitable, but it's a cool scene.
yeah, it's not very profitable, but it's a nice it's just a fun chill vibe, and I think yeah, it'd be nicer if there was more money involved, but I think just having good music is what I care about mostly.
The money is not the reason any of us started doing any of this. Otherwise, we would not be doing exactly what we're doing.
Right. You know, if I was more concerned about money, I wouldn't be playing the music because it's certainly more of a money drag in terms of just taking away
Time spent. Yeah,
taking
exactly.
away focus from like, you know, what could be a more lucrative career if I was a little bit more focused on
But
it.
as a true rebel who has a talent who could make money, you decide to do what burns in your blood that you were made to do, at least in one sector of yourself, which is this music, which is far left of most lefts.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's important to be passionate about what you do. Well, if you don't care about it, what's the point?
Don't do it. Yeah, well, exactly.
Have you ever been heckled? Do you any, you play the experimental music. Has anyone ever really given you a lot of shit on
Or
stage?
have you ever heckled the audience? No,
Right.
that's my expertise. I'm sorry.
No, for the most part, I think our music is more approachable than, I mean, it's very extreme in terms of I don't play any normal notes. I don't play any rhythms very much. It's all improvised and all extended technique guitar. But that said, I do feel like contemporary audiences are more open to things than you might think they are. If I have, like, I talk to random people at bars, and if I'm talking to someone that has no idea what I'm describing, I'll tell them, it's sort of like a horror movie soundtrack, except not scary. And then they kind of get like, they're like, okay, so it's ambient, it's like textural,
and as I call it, psychoambient.
yeah, I think when people are in a state, like at a concert setting where they're open to liking something, they usually like what I'm doing, or they're at least polite. I think audiences are more open to things than we give them credit for, is what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
Well, I don't even consider an audience because I consider it a collective of individuals. And if there's one asshole out there, I'll deal with it. But whatever. I'm the master heckler, but most people, they wouldn't be there paying even $5 to $15 to $25 if they just wanted to be a freaking asshole. There's plenty of other places they can go than to come to us because they're gonna go down.
Well, Lydia, you're a
If I'm
master.
there.
You're a master of handling hecklers and stalkers. You're pretty good at that's
I'm not a stalker.
some pro insights. I mean, I always find that, if you're kind of genuine to what you're doing, people are almost always respectful.
Well, starting when I did, there was quite a bit of heckling which had to be dealt with, but that just, good luck, motherfuckers, you're not going to win. And it was only once in all of my entire career that it was a woman who was so drunk that ever interrupted.
We had a duo in Pittsburgh once, Lydia. That was pretty fun.
People are still talking about that. Yeah, well, he got a glass in his face, I believe.
Well, the thing is, there's a funny story, Sandy. Like, basically, he started heckling. He was loaded,
wasted,
and I think he probably was a Lydia fan. He
was a Lydia of the lowest order.
It was coming out in a really weird way, and
alcohol will do that.
He was basically heckling, and then of course it went silent, and all the young
and
fans.
That's when people should fear me.
The whole place went silent, and then how are we gonna handle it? And he kept on. There was a pause, and she's like, "Keep on talking, keep on talking," and then basically like a Chinese throwing star, or is the throwing star Japanese? Actually, I don't even know.
Chinese.
It's with precision, a wine glass, like smash right into him, and then the whole place exploded.
And they kicked him out.
And they dragged him out. And he's like, "I'm gonna call the cops," but then everyone's like, "What? Because you got
on yourself?"
And then he kind of like just snuck away into the shadows of the night because he was so humiliated.
You know what? alcohol, Dr. Jekyll, Dr. Hyde, whatever happens, it doesn't matter. It's like, just, back off, Boogaloo. You want to fuck with me, you're going to get hurt.
So, Sandy, a technical question, because I know you also play, when you play in stereo. You have 2 channels and you have 2 different amps spread apart, so because you can pan effects and do all kind of things. When did you develop that? Was that from the beginning, or was that something that came later?
Around 2008, I think. I had bought a second guitar amplifier. And so since I had 2, I thought it would be a good idea to be able to play through both of them.
Yeah.
So I went to the guitar store. I thought I was going to have to get some sort of splitting device and 2 volume pedals. But the guy at the guitar store said I could get this pan pedal, which would do all of that. And just
yes. I know that one.
So I got like the Ernie Ball volume pan pedal, and now I can play through my 2 amplifiers.
I mean, that's kind of the Ernie Ball volume pedal in general, no matter if it's a pan one or not. It's kind of the standard, but oh boy, has the quality control of those things gone down the tubes, just like everything.
Well, the string always breaks.
It always breaks.
I know how to replace it myself. I've done it several times.
Oh, what a pain in the ass that is, though.
It's such a pain in the ass. You need a bunch of screwdrivers and
special tools,
there's you need what is it called? A coat hanger, wires bent around so you can't stop. It's a whole process.
Yeah. I don't know about it.
Yeah, and we don't like to carry coat hangers around with us, but we might have to, considering the way that this fucking country is going. We might all have to become experts in coat hangers soon. It's
right, exactly.
I have to say.
The Supreme Court gives us no choice.
No, abort the Supreme Court, as I like to say.
We're down in Texas with my tools, if I'll get accused of something.
I'll be in Texas soon with the stand-up tragedy, stand-up comedy tour with JT Habersat in April, which I love the concept of, and also showing Artist Depression, Anxiety, and Rage. I thought I would go on, show the film, let JT go on, do some comedy, and then, hello, people, what more do you want? You got the tragedy, they got the comedy, you got the depression, anxiety, and rage. How much more can you expect in one night? That's all I'm saying.
That sounds like fun.
I mean, I'm just reminded of something, Sandy, which I find interesting. Once we were talking about ayahuasca, and you said nothing for you. And I asked you, well, have you ever had any trauma? And you said, no, not really. And I thought, very cool. Why ayahuasca? Was just another night at the bar stool for you. Some people, it's like memory theater, puking and all of it. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I think you're misremembering.
Oh, tell me then.
Well, I think we should talk about it another time.
All right. We don't have time anyway because we're about to close out. But I'm just saying, yeah, everybody's had trauma. But it's, I mean, I think my whole life has been an ayahuasca-based experience, but that's because I'm always puking on stage and occasionally shitting on the foreheads of those I can't stand.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, this is the Lydian Spin. We'll end it with that vulgarity. With Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and Sandy Ewen, architect, visual artist, guitar improviser, just a general, all-around, weird and wonderful gal. Thank you, Sandy.
Thanks, Lydia.
Thank you, Sandy.